Okay, we're going to make a video to do the third part of a Sonata Allegro form of, actually we're analyzing Mozart's K545, first movement of his piano sonata. It's the one that goes... We've already done a video where we did the exposition, or the first section of this movement, and the development on another video, and so this is the third one doing the recapitulation. I'll link these two videos in the description, and if you're coming to this brand new, I highly suggest at least watching this one, because the recapitulation is a restatement of materials from the exposition, pretty much in the same order, but with some modifications. Okay, and so it's really important for you to be familiar with the format and the materials of this so that this makes sense. And that's the viewpoint we're going to go from, is comparative. In fact, a lot of times what I do with classes is we'll look at a sonata and we'll do the exposition together as a class. And then I'll say, now that you have this, go and check it out and compare it to the recapitulation or the last section of the movement and see how it's different. Like if there's extra measures or missing measures, or if the music's different in any place, comment how and why. And that's really useful. So recapitulation, you know, there's large scale balance things going on. Like we had this, and then we had a development section, and now we're going to balance that out with a restatement of the original materials. And if you think about an exposition, this is a little quick recap for comparison. You have theme 1, transition, theme 2, transition, and an ending section called the Codetta. And we'd start in the home key, call it the tonic, and the first transition modulates to the dominant, or 5 steps up. Or if you were in the minor key to start with here, I might go to the relative major and it stays there. Then the development goes through a bunch of different keys and does a bunch of different things working with the materials you had. The recapitulation generally starts with, has still theme 1 transition, theme 2 transition, and a Codetta like the exposition did, but usually it starts in the home key. The transition is modified so that it doesn't modulate, and it stays in the home key and then stays the entire time. This changing of the key here at the beginning signals that we're starting on our piece and we're off on an adventure. And here, not changing key tells us that we finished our adventure and now we're doing this triumphant return, like a parade at the end when you've won the Stanley Cup or something like that, right? And that's usually the formula that happens. And so there'll be modifications often of the transitions so that they don't change key, right? But you'll find other modifications as well, that sometimes there's just extra material because it can be for fun. It can be for aesthetics. The composer says, I can do it this way, but if I do it like this, it's really cool. Or maybe it accomplishes both, not changing keys and things like that, but it's a different version of it. Sometimes he does it, or she does it, to subvert our expectations. We know how this piece is going, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to do it differently right here, and it's delightful that it's different. Okay, that's how that works. Now, in this particular sonata, Mozart has new materials or different materials to monkey with key changes and stuff like that too. However, he does an interesting thing. This is a variant on this. Instead of starting in the home key, in this case C major that this piece was in, he starts in the subdominant, or key of 4, which is F major. And the reason for that is, originally this music started in C and then modulated up 5 steps of the scale to the key of G, right? If we start in the key of F for the recapitulation and don't modify the relationship, then it will go up 5 steps and end up by theme 2 in the home key. Although he does it in kind of an interesting way, because he does this, but then he also throws in new material as well to subvert our expectations, but then accomplishes some modulation anyways. This is a variant way, so you don't have to modify too much here. Use your original material and it takes you there, but you start in a different place. He did this in this piece. He's done it in the second to last symphony he wrote. It's the one that goes, no, it's the one before, the one that's in G minor. I think it's number 39 or 40, 39, I think. And we've seen other composers do this, and Mozart didn't invent it. Bach's invention number 8. comes back around at the end, although it's not a sonata form, but when it comes back around to the end statements, it starts on 4 and then modulates up, because the original one starts on 1 and goes to 5. And so Mozart would have been aware of these devices from studying Bach and other people that came before him. It's cool. Anyhow, so that means that when we start our recapitulation here, instead of being here, all C's and C chords and stuff like that, we start on an F chord up here. But other than being in a different key, it's exactly the same. Now, I've pre-marked some of this stuff because honestly, I made this video. I started to a little earlier and then a phone call came in on my cell phone and killed the video. And kind of disappointed. But it works out just fine because pre-marked is fine. Let's do some comparisons so you can just see. And I sort of color-coded these things the same way. It's exactly the same, okay? So, bum, ba, da, dum, da, dum. Same thing here, just different keys. Bum, ba, da, dum, da, dum. Same thing there. So our theme is our little 4-measure theme. Even the left hand is exactly the same. The chords are the same. The inversions are the same. You know, so I have a 1 going to a 5, 4, 3 going to a 1, pedal 6, 4, just like we had a pedal 6, 4 right there. Just the actual chords are different because we're in the key of F rather than the key of C, right? And we get our little imperfect authentic cadence going from a 5, 6 to a 1 right there, and then we're transition. Now, this starts on the 4 chord, so does this. But it will change up because we have to get back to the key of C. So, 4 going to a 1, 6, which is right there. And the 1, 6 goes to a 2, which is right there. This is the original exposition, right? It's just we're in the key of B flat. So this is, or F. So this is a B flat chord, going to an F chord, going to a G minor 7, going to a C7, going to an F. Now, here's where, and I've done it in red, we have new material that's been entered in here. 4 more measures. And it's for 2 reasons. One is that he wants to break our feeling that we're in the key of F here, okay? And he'll do that by changing keys with chords and scales. See, we lose the B flat right there, and we never get it back. And also to subvert our expectations, because this thing used to go like this. It went. And then it does this little transition thing out of there, and that's right there, right? In the original context here, we interpret this as an authentic cadence and a key change because there's an F sharp there, which could be a 5 of 5 going to 5, but we interpret it as a change to the key of G because into an authentic cadence, because the F sharp leads us to G, has a bunch of little plagal statements afterwards, solid cadence on the G chord, but what follows afterwards is plainly in the key of G. And so if there's any doubt in our mind, right, after you do that, then you hear this thing that goes. And this is my D7 chord. And then my new theme, this is the exposition, right, is, right? Okay, sorry, I only have one hand over the piano and I'm turned sideways. But when we get to here, what follows that is in a different key. It's back in the key of C right here. So it goes. And then it's, you know, right? It's exactly the same, but it's in the key of C. So because we hear this in the key of C now, we interpret this in our ears as a half cadence. And might be like, how can you do that? It's the same notes, right? We'll get back to this in a minute here, but I just want to talk about this. How can it be a half cadence, or sorry, an authentic cadence the first time and then a half cadence the next time, if the notes are exactly the same? And I'll just say, first off, it's what follows that helps us interpret what we had, right? If it continues on in the key of G, like it did in the exposition, then we go, oh yeah, clearly that was that. Hindsight, right? And here, since we're in the key of C in our next theme 2, then we reinterpret that in our ears. And you might go like, you're still hedging bets, I don't believe you. I'm just going to show you a picture of this. You see it on the internet. It's pretty famous. If you haven't seen it, then this will be revelatory for you. And if not, you'll go like, oh. If you look at this from one perspective, this is a mouth, this is a big nose, and these are eyes, and this is sort of like a close-up of an old lady's face, right? Okay, maybe you can see that. There's the nose, that's the eye and the eye. This is the mouth, and this is the chin, and it's like she's got a fur coat and maybe a hat and stuff like that. Feather, right? It's one way of looking at it. If you can change it in your eyes and think of this as a young lady looking away from us, then this is her cheek and her chin, cheekbone right there, and this is her ear, this is her nose, and that's an eyelash. And now she looks younger, and this is like a ribbon around her neck and then going down the nape of her neck into her chest area, right? Can you see that? Side profile, right, of a face, eyelashes, nose, young lady, presumed to be. Or if you change the angle and say this is the nose, eye and eye, mouth and large chin, old lady. It's both. Depends on how you see it and what you interpret these things as. And that's kind of what's going on here in the music. That's actually really good to know as a composer, is that sometimes you like to say therefore this and stuff, but it's interpretive. It's not that it could be anything, right? When we see stuff like this F sharp could be a 5 of 5 going to a 5, could be we've changed key, and what comes after will confirm that in our ears, right? Let's give you another example. There's a joke that kids tell around here. They say, if April showers bring May flowers, what do May flowers bring? And it's an American joke. April showers bring May flowers. What do May flowers bring? Well, if you think of it seasonally and monthly, then you go June bugs, and it's a play on words. May flowers bring June bugs, April, May, June. But if you want, you can say April showers bring May flowers, and you think of Mayflower, the ship that came over here to the, in part of the exploration of the New World. Then you say it brought pilgrims, right? Mayflower, the ship, brought pilgrims. All right, it can be either, it can be both, right? And since we move on here in the key of C, we're gonna hear this as a half cadence, and that's how we're gonna interpret that. All right, that being said, let's just go back and see what's going on with these extra 4 measures right here. Okay, so we were the same up to this point, and then we get, what happens here is he says, well, I made it to my 1 chord in the key of F, and now I'm going to take this here, and I'm going to do it differently in terms of the chord, so I can change key, but I'm going to keep the texture the same with this running scale up and down sequence, but I'm going to invert the lines. Remember that Mozart is such a great musician and composer. He needs a conceptual idea, and then he works out the mechanics, right? Which is, I'm going to do this transition, and now for the recapitulation, I'm going to mess with your ears and do it again, and I'm also going to invert the counterpoint, meaning the left hand and the right hand will, left hand goes up top now, the right hand goes on the bottom, not physically, but the parts, and you can see what happens. This is another F chord right here, right? F, A, right? C, A, B flat, or F major scale up and down. It's totally hearable, right? But then here on this next one, B natural. So this is going from an F chord to a C chord, right? And then going from a C chord to a D minor 7. But this here in the sleight of hand, the scale makes us no longer hear that we're in the key of F anymore, right? So this 5 chord right here in the old key, right, in the key of F, C, is now my 1 chord in the new key, or the key that I want to be in, which is the original key of the piece. And then you can interpret the rest of these chords in the key of C. No more B flats, right? So this is my D minor 7, D, F, A, right? Or D, F, C, and there's my A right there, right? And 2 goes to 5. This is a G7 chord, G, B, D, F. Don't really need the D right there. And 5 goes to 1. And that's my C chord right there. And then at that point, he can tag back on this thing exactly verbatim from the previous original, like the exposition, right? And it's clever. He gets so much, he gets the duality of that. He gets the mileage out of the same music. He doesn't have to write it twice, right? And but it comes at it from a fresh new direction, bringing us back to the key of C rather than moving us away from the key of C, right? And if you want to understand why there's a C sharp there, like a D melodic minor going on right there, go back and watch the exposition. But again, he's just same kind of thing. When he was originally going to the key of G, he wants to subvert our feelings of the key of C major originally going to G, so he starts using other scales and things like that temporarily to give us breaking away from that entrenched original key. Right? He can keep it here too because it's fine. All right, here we go. Second part, theme 2. It's all the same, exactly the same. It's just in the key of C now instead of the key of G. So this measure right here is a 1/6 because this is a C chord as opposed to the G chord. This is theme 2 right there. Okay, and then on the second half of that is my 5/2 with our little non-chord tones going on. It's exactly the same, it's just been transposed. And then it does a repeat of this again, like it did right there, exactly the same as it did right there. Right, he just did it twice in a row, does it twice in a row right here. Now, here we had a circle of fifths, and we had a great fun time in the first video going through and doing them all. It's all the same. So if we look here, 1 going down a fifth to 4, going down a fifth to 7, going down a fifth to 3, going down to 6 to 2 to 5 to 1. We should expect the same thing here. Let's just spell this out ahead of time. 1 is C, goes down to 4, right? That should be F, right? Goes down to 7, that should be B. Not here, but in the new key over here, right? Goes down to 3, that should be E, right? We're just in the C major scale right here, right? E goes down a fifth, that should be A, right? And then the 2 chord should be a D, and then that should go to a G, right? And that should come back around to my C chord. That's my circle of fifths in the key of C. We see that it's happening every 2 beats, right? And it's tricky because the last note of the first thing is part of the chord, but the last note of this figure is actually part of the next chord. So we hear it like this, right? Like that. So let's just check it out. C, E, E, G. This is my C chord right here, right? That's my 1/6, right? This is my F chord that follows right there. It's my 4 chord, right? F is in the bass. It's alternating first inversion and then root position, first inversion, root position. This is a B chord, B, D, F, right? This is my B diminished, so it's a 7 diminished, 6 because of the inversion, right? Should go to the E chord right here, E, G, B, E, right? So E is my 3 chord right there. 3 should go to 6. This looks like it's going to be a C chord. Change of clef right there, but it's C, E, A or A, C, E. It's going to be my 6, right? Which is that one right there, which is going to take me to my 2 chord right here, which is D, F, A right there, right? And 2 is going to take me to G, which is my 5 chord, and here's my G, B, D. It's my 5 chord right there. And that's going to take me to C, which is 1 right there, right? So we did it, right? Now, and that's great as well because, you know, you can say, like, from a memorization point of view, you just say, I take this thing right here, And I'm here originally, and I'm going like, right? And now I'm just going to take this whole thing, and if I know my theory and I practice a little bit, then I can do the same thing here, but in the key of C, right? Right? I don't have to think hard because I've learned my music theory and I know what my circle of fifths is here, and I just plug it in. This is why theory is so great, because it helps you understand the grammar of things. You don't have to memorize every note. You memorize chunks of information and give them bigger subset names. All right, now there's a difference, however. After we get out of here, we go, this is the original one, right? And then we're in my cadence here. He's going to do it a little different. He gets to here, and it's still going to be a 2-6. It's still a D minor chord here. That's fine. But instead of going up like this, straight to this cadence, he gives us a different version. It's just aesthetic. He could have just as simply put this here. In fact, from here over, you'll notice that my color is a little different. This is like bright orange, and this is darker orange. That is exactly the same as right there, the last little bit. It's just from here to here, he's written us a different version of it. It's really cool, all right? So this is 1-6-4 right there, right? Which is the same as the original one, but the melody is different, right? And then 5-7 right there, and going to a 1 chord, okay? So the left hand is the same for this part, right? But the right hand only comes back to there, and this whole part's a little different. This is a cool chord in here, okay? So this one goes, and then we get this nice run. Hold on, it's just a little more flourishy than this one right there. And again, it's just delightful that it's different. So let's take a look at this chord right here. This was my D minor chord, which is my 2, right? Here I have an F sharp, A, C, and E flat, okay? Whenever you see chromaticized notes like this and you know that you're staying in the key, you should ask yourself, is it a 5 of something or a 7 of something? This is an F sharp diminished 7. And that diminished 7 chords are always, well, almost always 7 of something, and that would be 7 of G, which means that this is a 7 diminished 7 of 5 in this key. And this is all a tonic 6-4, 5 chord right there. So he goes from here, and instead of going straight into the next thing, he stays on the 2 chord for a long time here. He says, let's ramp it up one more time, and goes from here to this. So from here, right, this chord right here, instead of staying on it for another measure, he says, let's change that into this, and then to here, right? And that's it, okay? And then the ending, it's the same. It's exactly the same, except it's in the key of C, and he adds extra notes, like +1 note, just for chunkiness, to give it a little more emphasis right there, right? -1 note right there. Because on the final cadence, he just wants you to hear the tonic note only. Again, he's signaling to us that we're done. All right. I just want to review real quick again that in order to do an analysis of a sonata form, you want to know the formula for the sections, and then you want to know the exposition. And you learn this part really, really well, because the themes and materials in here get used in different keys and in different ways, and sometimes fragmented or recombined or flipped around. They're manipulated somehow as well, or they can be combined with new materials, right? We look for cadences in here, and we look for keys that are closely related as well. And then when we get back to the recapitulation, we know that it has a similar formula to the exposition, but it's usually modified in some way for aesthetic reasons or mechanical reasons or both, so that we stay in the home key. In this case, we have a variant where we end up starting in the subdominant, which is, it's not done never, it's just I wouldn't look for it everywhere. This is much more common, right? But it all comes back to knowing these things. You should be able to go like bum, 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 ba-da-dum, bum, 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 ba-da-dum. You can know this part, and then we get to hear it's like be-da-dum, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, be-da-dum, ba-da-dum, bum, ba-dum. You want to know these so well that when you hear them in the development or other places, you can say, there it is, or it's been fragmented, or it's in a different key, right? And then bum, ba-da-da-dum, 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 right? Or ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum. You can spend a lot of time here just getting to know this. And remember, if you're going like, well, I get lost in the music of these things when I go listen to them. Well, you just need to learn and sing the original components more. And then it's delightful when you know the formula, because you know what's going on, but you also understand the journey, the adventure, and you understand the, oh, he didn't do what I thought he was going to do, or she didn't think, you know, it depends on the composer, or, you know, man or woman, but they subvert our expectations, right? It's different. And that's when it becomes enjoyable. Spend the time right here. And you know, Mozart's audience, for comparative lack of understanding of technology and science and things that we have now, to them, they're very sophisticated listeners. They knew these formulas. They knew what they were listening for. They could, of course, just listen at any given moment for the sheer pleasure of the sounds, like we do too, but they also knew what to expect in these forms. And so they were surprised and delighted when their expectations were met and exceeded, and they were also found great entertainment and diversion when the composer went within stylistic norms outside of what was expected and surprised them too. Not unlike when you watch a movie, right? There are things you expect, things that seem normal, and then sometimes our aesthetics and our hopes are subverted, hopefully for good reason and with great reward. All right, cool.